Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Digital Front Door. I'm your host, Scott Benedict. For the last few years, no conversation about driving sales growth at retail can be had without a discussion including the meteoric rise of retail media. And for retailers, the opportunity to monetize traffic to your website, to your app, or to your store has created new revenue streams that not only drive increased profits to the bottom line, but in many cases, retail media income has turned unprofitable e-commerce operations profitable, and not by a little bit. For consumer brands, retail media has provided an opportunity to invest marketing dollars that once focused only on generating impressions into improved return on ad spend results that can be more closely attributed to an actual sales outcome at retail. Metaphorically speaking, marketing dollars now can be targeted like a laser-guided smart bomb, if you'll forgive the analogy, that marketers know will reach their targeted audience with great precision. Now, for those of us in retailing who are not involved in managing retail media businesses on an everyday basis, this aspect of digital retailing can seem sometimes like a mysterious, opaque black box. And we know that something interesting is going on in that area of the business, but we're not really sure what it is or how it works. And so, to me, that sounds like an opportunity to reach out to an expert on the topic, and I know just the person to help us. Joining us today is Toby Willse. He's the Senior Director of Retail Media at Flywheel Digital, and Toby is joining us remotely today from Baltimore. Toby, welcome onto the program, and thank you for taking some time out to talk to our audience today.
Thanks so much, Scott. I'm looking forward to being here and really excited to talk a little bit about retail media.
Awesome. Exciting. So let's, I touched a little bit on what retail media is and its impact, but maybe let's go a level deeper. And if someone asked you to kind of define, when we use the term retail media, what are we talking about? What would you say?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's, to your point, not something that existed even 5 or 6 years ago in the form that it does today. And so if I were to describe retail media in a 2-sentence blurb, it's really media investment using retailer audience insights to allow you to target the shopper who is actively on those retailers' websites or venturing into those retailer stores to capture them while they are browsing the open internet or actively shopping on site.
And it sounds like one of the great things about retail media is that you're really catching a shopper right at the point in which they're demonstrating an intent. They're demonstrating an interest to shop for a particular item or a particular category. And as I mentioned in the opening, where before a lot of brand marketers were going for impressions, but they couldn't always tie a media dollar to a specific outcome. It feels like one of the beautiful things about retail media is now you can kind of connect the two. A dollar spent here, we think, resulted in a sale over here. Is that a fair way to think about it?
Yeah, I would say that's very fair. At the end of the day, the way that it really breaks down is, historically, to your point, when advertisers look at the marketing funnel, they think of the top of the marketing funnel, driving those impressions, driving awareness, and then slowly trickling down with your bottom of funnel really being click-through rate measurements and seeing how often am I engaging a consumer. Today, retail media lets you look at a true closed-loop attribution and see that sale tide. And it has upended the way advertisers think about investment, because now they're thinking about, well, I'm right in front of the shopper, so I need to start at the bottom and then work my way up the funnel as opposed to the historical approach.
That makes sense. And it feels like then one of the biggest advantages of retail media versus traditional media spend, and you kind of touched on some of it, the ability to do attribution, to connect a dollar spent with a dollar of sales. But talk a little bit about the ability of retail media to really kind of target in on a specific shopper or someone who's demonstrating a particular intent. And the fact that, from what I've learned from you and others, is that you're really getting a qualified buyer, someone who's demonstrated an interest in a particular product. dive a little deeper on that, if you would.
Yeah, absolutely. So, retail media breaks down to two investment buckets, if you will. On-site search. So the actual keyword in which the consumer is searching or the placement on site that they are ending up. So to your point, I can specifically target a red t-shirt keyword if I am selling for a brand that happens to have multiple different colored shirts, of which one is red, and they are struggling to drive relevancy to that particular product line. We can use advertising to capture the consumer right there when we know they are interested in buying a red t-shirt. I can get them to buy my red t-shirt because of that pinpoint targeting and that very specific capability to deliver against that keyword. You also have display. And so display, similar to traditional online display that many advertisers and brands now been around for decades. This is the extension of that and uses first-party retailer data. So display with retail media is a complete step towards true closed-loop sales because I can actually target dad who was buying that red t-shirt 6 months ago from a different brand, a competitor brand of mine. I know that shirt's probably ratty now, and I want to get them to buy another one. I can target that exact consumer and show them that exact red t-shirt to get them to make that purchase. So the ability to capture a consumer is unsurpassed by any other third-party retailer activation that exists today because of these first-party integrations.
And that makes a lot of sense. And you mentioned that first-party data. I know that based on the size of the retailer, and obviously we're here in Bentonville, so we're talking about one retailer in particular. One of the advantages that they have for marketers, the fact that qualified purchaser and that data that they have, obviously not only is much more significant in its sheer size, but you're taking a pretty wide, smart swath of the population, very qualified buyers when you're targeting the ads through them or another large retailer like that. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's very fair to say, especially with the major elephant in the room, if you will, of the retailer we're talking about. Their scale is completely unmatched, and because of this, it's why retail media is becoming such a large investment lever. Every year, you're hearing about brands investing more in retail media, less in national media. It's not that national media doesn't still hold a value. Often, brands are still investing the same way they were before 5 years ago. They're investing in streaming TV. They're investing in linear TV. But the difference is that they're using first-party retailer data segments instead of third-party segments. They are not using an audience segment curated through cookies by a third-party company that then sold it to a display advertiser like Trade Desk. They are literally using Walmart's data of Walmart saying, these are the audiences buying from my store using credit card transactions, Walmart.com websites, or Amazon websites, Amazon credit card transactions, Target doing something similar. This allows these retailers to provide data and audience information that was never available before. So I know for a fact I'm capturing the right consumer, whereas in past years, it was more of a guessing game.
Right. So it feels like the benefits for brand marketers are pretty well known, pretty well documented. Let's switch over and talk about the benefits for a retailer now, whether it's Walmart or another retailer. I mentioned in the introduction that it creates a new revenue stream, certainly for the retailer. But beyond that, what other benefits come to the retailer through the use of retail media platforms?
That's a great question. And so this is where it gets a lot, I wouldn't say tricky, but can be considered, some brands find this a little bit frustrating, but it's just a matter of fact. At the end of the day, retailers see a huge benefit of this advertising, not just through the revenue stream, but also because A, they're making their site experience better. They're helping consumers find products easier than they ever have before. On top of it, they're getting paid for it. And B, and more importantly, in many retailers' eyes, they're driving traffic to the retailer by leveraging this capability and letting brands use their audience data. Not only are advertisers now feeling more sophisticated with their investments and what they're able to achieve, but for the retailers, they are seeing more traffic drive to their sites, drive to their store than they ever have before, because now audiences are using their data. And As a part of this data access, each of these retailers have a very strict rules about where you can drive that consumer. You have to drive them to Walmart.com or to store. You have to drive them to Target.com or to store, depending on which retailer you're using data for, which means naturally they're going to see an uplift to their traffic from this investment.
So it feels like there's a customer experience benefit to your point, and the fact that you're helping to guide through advertising spend a shopper who's looking for something specific. It feels like it's a little bit more likely that they're going to end up with an item or a group of items that are more closely aligned to what they're looking for than perhaps 5 or 10 years ago or earlier in the growth of e-commerce, when the search capability of the site was really all that was helping with that and the taxonomy of the navigation. But now the advertising spend is helping to guide them towards products that they're interested in. Is that a good way to look at it?
Yeah, I would say that's a great way to look at it. The only little thing I'd add there is it also helps drive discovery. Historically, to your point, the only things that would help you navigate on a site were the pre-built taxonomy filters, etc. So if I am a new brand on Walmart or have a new product line, it's extremely hard to find my product as a consumer. I have no idea that new product exists unless you have marketing going on nationally or off-site. By having search capabilities, I can put that item right in front of me. When I search for red t-shirt, it's right there. And even though I wouldn't have known that brand, Hanes came out with the new shirt, now I do.
That's awesome. Back to the benefits for brands, it feels like not only helping them to find an item that their search queries kind of demonstrate an intent, but it feels like context is also important in the ability to really measure the result of their marketing dollars. It feels like retail media, and I guess I'm asking a question here, it feels like it helps find a buyer, help a buyer find an item at the time that they're looking for, right when they're shopping for it. So when they're in the mode of buying, it feels like that's a better dollar spend for a brand than perhaps ever before, even though I think you and other folks that I've known in the business know that you have to also spend in other areas of digital marketing to create awareness ahead of the actual time I'm wanting to make the purchase. But overall, it feels like for brands, it's a more targeted, focused dollar in the right place at the right time. Is that the right way to think about it?
Yeah, I would definitely think so. The capability to see that return on ad spend and then compare your impression delivery, your spend delivery to your more national media buys that do not have those metrics that retail media has become so well fond of and well known for, still allows you to do a proper comparison. So things like mixed media modeling, MMM analysis, these allow the brands to still be able to compare the results of retail media with their linear TV, their national media buys, and understand the efficiency of them. But they now have these additional metrics like conversion data and true closed loop sales measurement to be able to say, okay, without that MMM data to help me understand efficiency, I also now know the impacts of my bottom funnel activation, my retail media, and I can see what my true ROI is. I'm not guessing, or I'm not just going off of a stated return on ad spend or ROAS as these systems provide. I can legitimately take the attributed sales, map them back to my top line sales, and then truly say what my growth was.
No, and that feels like just if you're a brand, you've got to feel that you've got greater confidence that you're getting a return on your dollar and get it in a way that can be seen and objectively measured, probably more so than ever before. One of the things I'm interested to kind of hear your thoughts on is so much of what we talk about when we talk about retail media is what happens online, but there's innovation and new things happening in physical stores that relate to overall retail media. Can you maybe talk about that, maybe some of the new things that you're seeing or that perhaps brands are going to see become more common as we move into the future?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of retailers are starting to chase this. I will say Walmart's ahead of the pack here. What we're seeing most effectively in a lot of these department store models where the store is larger, the scale is larger, and they have an electronics section, most importantly, is on display TV ads. So you can actually pay for an ad that will showcase during certain times or rotate throughout the day on the display TVs in the store. And this will allow you to advertise to consumers while they're shopping. Walmart's also testing things like checkout advertisements. So as you're doing your self-checkout, you'll get ads right on the screen. There's radio advertising that's now occurring. So you'll actually get ads through the intercom system in the stores. Walmart and Target are testing this now. Both are also testing digital out of home. Now, this is where you get really crazy. The ability to actually track sales with a billboard against the highway is truly unparalleled. I mean, that's incredible that we're getting to that point, but we are. They're both testing this capability this year. So there's a lot of scale opportunity here with the different retailer testing. What I expect to see is more of these digital out-of-home investments as third-party integrators continue to figure out ways to work with these retailers like Walmart and Target to provide closed-loop attribution when a billboard is in the middle of Missouri, or be able to provide the same thing with a kiosk that is in next to a bus stop in New York City and being able to see that closed-loop attribution. The other piece that I think is going to become much more mainstream in store is going to be checkout ads. Because almost every store today has some sort of self-checkout system. Most likely what we're going to see is a larger investment in retailers in that space because it is a very open-ended place to be able to place a advertisement. Cost is low, and on top of that, it gets to the consumer right towards the last mile, if you will, of their shopping. And so you can remind them of things they might want to come back on later, particularly when it comes to potential upcoming discounts or upsells to larger sizes. If for instance, in the future, you could see that through transaction information, the system would know that they bought a 12-pack of yogurt, and I could advertise to them a 1-gallon container of yogurt instead to try to upsell them to a larger size that would also be more profitable for me because it's not sold in multiple different little plastic tubs.
Well, so one of the things I had the opportunity to attend the NRF show earlier this year, and it probably won't shock you that there was a lot of providers of this smart cart technology, and that's been really more about making the checkout process faster and easier, and it certainly does that. But I even saw one that the smart cart also had digital display advertising on the screens in the cart, and one of the providers I saw actually put that in the context of where you were in the store. And so I'm like, wow, that's kind of interesting. To your point, maybe a little bit creepy because it knows what aisle I'm in. But does it feel like that's imminent, or is that maybe still a little ways away in terms of becoming mainstream, in terms of what a consumer will encounter while shopping and what a marketer can advertise on in a store? Is that still a ways off?
That's a great question. I would say it's probably closer than you think for Walmart and Sam's Club. Sam's Club already does it today very well, I will say. Their click and collect capability with their Scan and Go app is amazing. And to your point, advertising already uses today. We can do ads to run a Scan and Go coupon and target the specific people who use Scan and Go. So while they're in the store on their phone scanning away, they will get the ad for the item I want them to buy that is on discount with a Scan and Go only shopper to specifically target them. Walmart offers this only for Walmart Plus today. If you're a Walmart Plus member, you can use the Scan and Go app. It's the same technology that Sam's Club uses, since they're all owned by the same company. They are getting to the point where they're going to offer something similar to the Spark insight that you just mentioned. I would say the other retailers are probably a few years off. Usually grocers, I think they're going to get there, but probably not for 5-6 years, just because they're still so far behind here. They're still focused on trying to drive the best consumer experience and making their margins better. Target is likely somewhere in the middle where they're going in that direction, but they still have so many other things they need to work on first that Walmart's already gotten right that it's likely a little bit further behind for them. I think Walmart's going to lead the pack here.
Gotcha. Neat. One of the things, well, knowing who our audience is, and a lot of our audience is the supplier community here in Northwest Arkansas that serves Walmart and Sam's Club. And I always like to ask if you could advise any of them on the work that they are doing to make their retail media spend the most effective and most efficient. What would you tell them in terms of where they should place some emphasis and some focus to make sure they get the maximum return on those investments?
Yeah, great question. And the answer is different for Sam's Club versus Walmart. I'll answer Sam's Club first because it's a pretty quick one. Sam's Club doesn't have quite the same scale as Walmart from an audience perspective. And that's truly just because they're a wholesaler. So their competitive set for any particular product line, any category, is very limited. They generally carry maybe 5 brand tops of any particular product type. And because of that, sponsored search on site isn't as necessary. It's definitely still an excellent revenue generator for you and an investment lever. The return's going to be fantastic, but the scale's just not there from an incremental sales perspective. So with Sam's Club, the recommendation is always look at off-site display and on-site display. The scan and go display campaigns I was just mentioning, these are actually where you're going to get better bang for your buck with Sam's Club, because you're going to have more opportunity to capture a consumer who is potentially buying from a different retailer right now, or has not shown interest in your particular product line, and get them to convert. Search is going to be a little bit harder to see any true growth of new member acquisition. Now with Walmart, the key is making sure that you're as effective and efficient as possible with your search campaigns, really focusing on items that are not already organically prevalent, because those items are already going to make a sale naturally. If you advertise those items, you're going to see a great return on ad spend stated from your ad metrics. But if you actually try to compare it to your top line revenue, you're not going to see much of a difference. And so you're going to really struggle to say, well, what is my media actually doing? I'm getting this $8 return, but when I look at my top line, I'm up 1%. The math's not adding up here. And that is because often you're going to take credit for the sun coming up if you're promoting an item that's already organically prevalent. So you really want to focus on items that are lower organically ranking, harder to find for the consumer. That's going to be much more impactful for your business. Your dollar's going to stretch a lot further. And then when it comes to display investment, think about what you're trying to do. If your focus is consistent and sustained growth on the platform, you're newer, or maybe you have a larger new product line launch, you're going to want to do an evergreen, always-on display investment and really focus on a lower amount of funding during non-peak periods, and then pulse that spend up during peak seasonal periods like Black Friday or Cyber Monday. Now, if you're more established and you're well-known in the industry, maybe you're a Newell or a P&G where your brands are, some of the top category leaders, that always-on display investment, probably not as necessary. And you can focus this on tentpole periods when you need to pulse that spend up dramatically, and then reduce down and focus on search instead, where you have more of an evergreen strategy that's going to return a better ROI for you and be a little bit more cost effective.
Gotcha. One of the things I know from conversations you and I have had in the past is that item page content and knowing what keywords, typically a non-branded keyword that a consumer is looking for in your category, if you're a brand, making sure that those terms exist within your product descriptions and within your content is also kind of a foundational element of success, is it not? In other words, the search term, the search query that you're paying for, if it doesn't find that term in the description of a product, isn't it less likely to be successful?
Yes, exactly. It varies by retailer, but each retailer, no matter what, there is some relevancy to the keywords you have in the title. For Walmart, it's very strict. If you do not have keywords in your title, if you don't have your keywords in a very particular point of your title, for instance, a key term that you need to serve against, you put at the very end of your title, might not do anything to your organic ranking. You move that exact keyword off the second term in your title, all of a sudden your organic rank number 10 and you're able to advertise. They mean the world to your actual positioning on site. So please make sure you always have your titles organized based on what your product is actually selling. What is your product actually? Stay away from buzzwords, any kind of conjecture or any kind of, words like and, or, if. Try to really focus on just the key determining words that tell the story of what your product is and how consumers are trying to find your product. That is going to best serve you on site, and then make sure your content on the actual item page is best built to get the consumer to actually buy once they get to the item page. We can drive an ad to a consumer or to an item page all day. I cannot get the consumer to buy that item when they click on it. The page taxonomy itself, the imagery, the bullets, everything like this is what's going to determine if you're going to get that consumer to actually make a purchase.
Yeah, and I hear that question all the time, and part of the reason I want to make sure that we touched on that is I still encounter brands that aren't thinking about that as much as they should, and I always view it as the foundation upon which your business is built. If those content elements and the terms aren't present, your investment in paid media or even just organic searches are less likely to be successful. And if you don't have those things right, you can spend dollars all day long and you may not get results that you're happy with, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Now, let me ask you about seasonality as it relates to retail media. Obviously, as an ex-buyer, thinking about a season before it occurs and preparing for it before it occurs is not something just I had to worry about, but obviously my brand partners had to worry about it as well. Now, put that in the context of retail media. Do you find that beyond just running the everyday business, that brands that you work with are thinking ahead for seasonal search queries before the season, as well as during the season? What are you seeing out there in terms of the clients that you work with?
Yeah, I would say almost all pre-planned significantly at a time. I mean, often we're planning at least 3 months in advance for any kind of tentpole event, generally 6 months. And the way we're planning it out is looking at, and brands will review this, what were the keywords of velocity the previous year? So if I'm looking at holiday, what I'll first do is what keywords were consumers searching for stocking stuffers or for presents? How are consumers buying last year? How did that differ from the year before? So we can start to understand, now that these retailers have such a long list of data sets, often they're going back 3, 4, 5 years. I can look at these data sets and say, well, consumers are slightly changing their search term traffic and how they're approaching. And every year it's becoming more granulated to the browse node in which Walmart is putting your products. And so that helps us start to plan out, how do I need to think about my ad investment during that time? Do I need to change my taxonomy? Do I need to put Christmas in my titles or stocking stuffers? Maybe yes, maybe no. And starting to figure out these pieces so that by the time the actual holiday rolls around, we're pre-prepped and ready to release everything into the retailer ecosystem weeks ahead of time, so that we can start to build that velocity and that traffic early. That's often needed especially for holiday tentpoles, Easter, Halloween, Christmas, things of that nature. You need to make sure you're prepared weeks, months in advance, so that as consumers start to buy ahead of time, you are already in that positioning, and your costs to convert that consumer will be notably lower than if you waited, because many of your other competitor brands will not be ready yet.
Yeah, I feels like it's just got to become integrated into the planning process, like product forecasting and pricing and or rollback activity and in-store promotion. You've got to now add this at retail media to that whole planning process if you're really going to be holistically happy with every aspect of your business, not just at Walmart and Sam's, but any retailer. Right? Is that fair to say?
Very fair.
Good. Even though retail media itself is kind of an emerging new aspect of retail within the context of retail media, is there any kind of new emerging trends or new aspects of how to get the most out of your retail media investment that you're seeing that you would think our audience would want to be kind of on the lookout for and see this coming down the road?
Yeah, absolutely. There's certainly always, new ad types and flashy new placements, but I would say, where advertisers, brands, agencies are all interested in, really eyeballing, is clean rooms. data clean rooms are the next big thing, if you will, because what it essentially does is take what is a walled garden and remove the walls for you. It anonymizes all user data so that I can start looking at, John Doe. It will remove John Doe's name, but now I know exactly what he purchased, exactly when he purchased it, timestamps, what drove him to purchase that. Did you see a display ad first? How many clicks did it take him to get to the actual purchase? I can see everything. And because they anonymize this data, it's completely legal. There's nothing, kind of seedy about it, which was often the case with this kind of level of data in the past. It always got removed almost immediately because there were so many there was so much red tape around it that would stop it from being eligible to use. Clean rooms remove that. They make it a safe, secure way to see a consumer's journey in a way you've never seen before. Amazon already has this pretty well developed for their AMC. It was a marketing cloud clean room. Walmart is in beta for one right now. They've been working on it for about a year. Target is starting to explore it. Kroger has a lovely one that's built. The cost is very high to actually get into it. So the data in there is second to none. The cost to actually access that data is very high. But everybody is looking at this. Everyone wants a piece of the pie. Each retailer is trying to build their own clean room. CMX, CVS recently just announced their own start of a version of a clean room. So that's really where the puck is heading, is these clean rooms that allow you to take walled garden data, anonymize it, and then pair it with your own data, your D2C data, pair it with other retailers' data in the future. That's the next big leap, is when I can take two anonymized data streams, Amazon and Walmart, put them together, and then understand what's the actual overlap.
Wow. Sounds like exciting things, not only for the people that are running the business today, but as I'm thinking about students who are maybe thinking about careers in retailing broadly or in digital marketing specifically, there's a lot of innovation and cool things that are coming down the pike that should make that as a career choice kind of an interesting opportunity for a lot of young people as well, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I would say this is a fantastic field to get in right now. Advertising is never going to go anywhere. Outside of a complete breakdown of society and an apocalypse-like scenario, I can't see advertising ever leaving the space, and digital advertising is only going to become larger and larger because that's how consumers shop at the end of the day. And more importantly, how I can get the consumer to even be interested in my product, because everyone is so digitally focused, especially the younger audience, which a lot of advertisers are having trouble targeting. How do I hit that 20-year-old millennial or that Gen Zer? They don't know how to do this yet because the just entire change in how humans use technology is so visceral in the last 10 years. It's hard for a lot of these marketers to figure out how to target this younger generation. This is an opportunity for those coming fresh out of college to inject their own insights, what they do on the day-to-day, their own learnings, and use that to help further drive this e-commerce boom that we're seeing.
That is awesome. As I think about all of the Walmart and Sam's Club business teams located here or that work with their Walmart and Sam's Club merchants, in many cases, they've got members of the team. In many cases, it's the sharper marketing team that they manage this aspect of the business every day. But a senior executive, a team leader, the person who's overall responsible for the Walmart and Sam's Club business, in many cases, if they didn't come up through digital marketing, they're the people I'm really talking about at the beginning of our session, that this may be an opaque black box in some cases. If you had a group of those folks listening in and they wanted to know, how can I manage those teams? How can I be a better leader, a better supervisor of those activities? Is there any advice that you would give them to the things that they should be looking for or managing with those teams on an everyday basis?
It's a great question. Honestly, what I would say is that the best thing they can do is take a little bit of time to do an introductory course to just digital media in general, and e-commerce media, retail media. They don't need to be experts in any particular retailer, but understanding that will be so helpful for them to lead their teams. The other thing, and the more important thing I would say, is be willing to be open-minded as your team brings you new ideas. Things are very, very different than they were even just 10 years ago. Heck, they're different than they were 5 years ago. And the main reason I say this is so often when I talk with these exact types of executives that you're speaking about today, they are immediately drawn to the flashy objects, the big shiny display ad. And because that is exactly what we used to invest in, and that was the investment lever. That was always what every national media buying company did. Get the big flashy display ads, make sure we have that billboard. We want the homepage placement on this site. But today what we've realized is that often consumers don't want the flashy ad. They often move right past it. I don't want to be duped into buying something. So instead, it's the non-flashy ads, it's the sponsored products, it's that banner that follows you around very smartly, and you only see that ad twice a week. It hits something in your mind that keeps you remembering it. And weeks later, you go and say, man, I really need that red shirt. You know what? I forgot Hanes is selling that new red shirt. So I'm going back to my example earlier. And all of a sudden, I'm buying the Hanes red shirt that I can't even remember that the reason I'm buying is because I got advertised it 2 weeks ago. And so that is the big kind of light bulb moment, I think, for a lot of these executives is, I need to rethink everything. And maybe it's not the shiny object. It's actually the object that's going to make my money. It's the dull rock over here that everybody wants and is going to touch at some point, but I don't realize that that's actually my opportunity.
Gotcha. And are there any KPIs as someone sitting in that seat is looking on their team that maybe are somewhat universal, either in the market broadly or in Walmart and Sam's Club specifically, that maybe you advise them? Here's a metric to really watch on an everyday basis. Does anything jump to mind?
Yeah, I would say click activity is the one I would look at most, in click-through rate, which because they're more agnostic to all advertising. I try to stay away from impressions for the most part when it comes to retail media because it can be a misleading number. Impressions are a fantastic number when you're looking at traditional advertising because you're just trying to hit as many households as possible. But with search, you're trying to hit a consumer who's going to click on the ad. So if I'm driving a ton of impressions at a low click rate, and therefore my click-through rate, clicks divided by impressions, is not very strong, that means that I'm not advertising properly. I'm blasting my ad all over the site, but only a very select amount of people are actually clicking on it. And when I do that, that means a lot of those clicks are unqualified. I'm getting a click of a consumer who's not actually ready to buy. So what I want to see is actually lower impression value, higher click value, and therefore a better click-through rate. So I highly recommend, as these executives look at, a metric that's available across the board, it's clicks, or what I would be looking at. And when you're looking at retail media specifically, I always like CPA, which is cost per acquisition. While it does require retailer data, you need that sales data, a CPA is agnostic of your actual ASP. So a CPA will tell you, true to form, doesn't matter if I'm selling a TV or a pack of Reese's, how much did it cost me to make this sale, so that I can then understand is the dollar worth the investment.
Gotcha. That makes sense. I'm confident our audience will find that very helpful because there's so many metrics and so many data points to manage, more so today than in the past, and which ones are generally more important, I think, is probably helpful. Before we end today, I did want to get your thoughts and impressions on something in the news recently, and that was Walmart's acquisition of Vizio. And I'm a former electronics buyer. In fact, I used to buy Vizio products when I was the buyer for Sam's Club, and so I looked at that when that news first leaked out as well. Why would you want to own a television manufacturer? But then as news got more in-depth, and then obviously when it finally got announced, it really was the television, the smart TV, as a point of contact for advertising with a consumer. As you heard about that announcement, what thoughts kind of ran through your brain about that and how that positions Walmart specifically?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think there's a short-term play they have in mind and a long-term play they have in mind. Their short-term play is the SmartCast system. Vizio SmartCast system boasts a few million subscribers, which is a great starting point for Walmart. And so they can immediately advertise against millions of users in a way that they weren't before. Most importantly, because they now own the system. They have their very own owned and operated placements, just like Amazon did. What Walmart's really doing here is chasing Amazon in a way that Amazon has succeeded. And I'm actually very impressed that Walmart's doing this. It's a tough one for Walmart to do. Walmart doesn't build their own tech in the same way Amazon does with their Alexa platform. But what Walmart's really doing here, the 5-year play, if you will, is that long term, the Vizio TV will be a product. It might be rebranded, but it will be a product that is low cost, so beats most other competitors' entry points. It's going to get into a lot of homes, and it will likely be something similar to Fire TV or Amazon. At the end of the day, in 5 years, we'll likely have a Walmart TV like experience where it will have a custom Walmart UI. Vizio's current UI will almost definitely go away. It will be a Walmart branded UI where Walmart can have banner ads. They can, just like Amazon, they can have above the fold ads, OTT, which Amazon provides. They can have specific in the long term, which I would be willing to wager my own money to say that in the next few years, you're also going to see them acquire something like a Paramount Plus, some sort of streaming platform. That or they're going to release their own. And that way they can also have a competitor offering it to Amazon Prime. Today, they partner with Paramount Plus as part of your Mobile Plus subscription. But because they partner, it's not their own owned and operated inventory. There's a cost to do advertising there. I would not be shocked if part of this is that they will also have their own owned and operating streaming service that will allow them to have advertising. Because what Amazon's successfully done in the last, call it 2 years, really the last year, is they are now seen as a national media buying arm. You can't ignore the elephant in the room that is Amazon Prime. So when national media buyers are buying streaming TV, they're buying Hulu, they're buying Paramount, HBO Max, they're buying Amazon Prime, and you have to buy it through Amazon. So now all of a sudden, Amazon is an avenue for national media. Walmart wants to slice that pie. And so they are looking to understand, how can I make this my Amazon Prime? And I fully think they will succeed in it. I've got a few Vizios in my house. I'm very excited to see how things change on my own setups. And one day when I turn on the TV, the UI will be totally different and will be an aha moment that I'm very excited for.
Well, that sounds exciting and a lot to look forward to. And it just reiterates the fact that it's an exciting time, not only for merchants and for brands, but for brand marketers as well, because there's so many different, both existing and potential ways to reach a consumer and to reach an audience. And it's kind of neat times to be living in my mind. So, Toby, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and your expertise with our audience. I'm so happy to have you and appreciate you taking time to chat with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It was wonderful to be on.
You bet. So I'll say this, if you're watching us today and you'd like to learn more about retail media management and want to reach out to Toby and the team at Flywheel Digital, please do so by visiting their website, which probably won't surprise you, is flywheeldigital.com. You didn't have to pay any marketing agency to come up with that URL. That one just kind of made perfect sense. And I know from personal experience that Toby and the team can absolutely help you be successful. So once again, Toby, thanks. And to our audience and to our viewers, thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next time.